welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
What do you got planned for the holidays, dude?
I go to my parents' house in the Poconos where I grew up. So head there. It's like magical Christmas, like fairy tales. My mom, my dad do big thing. It's been a thing for, I'm 39 years. I've been still going strong. My kids love it. My kids literally told us that the elves on the shelf at my mom's house are the real elves on the shelf, not the ones at our house.
Nice.
And I'll cook Christmas Eve dinner like Noche Buena because it keeps the spirit of my Puerto Rican grandmother alive.
So what do you cook? Like, what does that entail?
I'm gonna do. My wife doesn't eat pork, so instead of beni, like roasted pork shoulder, I'll do roasted lamb shoulder. Same way. I'll do roasted candules. I'll do pasteles. I'll do some type of beans. We're gonna do roasted fish this year. I think some type of like oregano marinated fish. There'll be mac and cheese on the table. My wife makes a killer mac and cheese.
Where's she? What's her background?
My wife's Black and Native American. She grew up in Boston.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, I know you got a Puerto Rican background, and among other things, but I'm curious, like, do you find it, are there ingredients that you wish you could get here that are hard to find, like, recao or, what we call culantro, like things that like make it less authentic? Or?
Yeah, like you could get culantro, but when you tell people about culantro, they're like, they have no idea what you're talking about.
I mean, what do you
Even
think?
when you call like a produce company and you're like, yo, man, can you give me culantro?
Like, yeah, we got culantro. It's spelled with an I.
Right. And then they send you cilantro.
Is there a big difference, you think?
I think it's huge difference, yeah.
Yeah.
I think culantro to me is like a mixture of like cilantro and sorrel.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
But I think that's the beauty of cooking, though. Like, you can only do so much in certain parts of the world or certain regions of the country, right? Like, here in the Northeast, you get the best corn in the summer. You get all the root vegetables. You get amazing fish out of Montauk. You go to California, the tomatoes are rocking.
Yeah.
Strawberries are phenomenal. So I think like that's the methodology of like a chef or like the creativity of the chef. Like you really tap into what you have.
Yeah. We're going to bounce around because I'm going to assume most people probably already know your background. But I want to make sure we talk about that. But you have this concept called FIELDTRIP, which is rice's culture is a big part of the whole concept, which is awesome. And it's what's cool about it is like it's not one culture or cuisine. You're actually looking at rice across all these different cuisines. But you're talking about like what's in season and what's ripe and where you're at. But like how do you actually maintain that as you're scaling this company, right? So and maybe we'll start with just like a little wind up of like what's FIELDTRIP and what's the concept and what's the vision.
FIELDTRIP is a rice bowl shop. I believe that rice is the greatest connector in the world, connects everybody. And I just utilize one ingredient to tell multitudes of stories around food, in places that I've traveled or food that I loved. When I first started thinking about FIELDTRIP, I thought it was going to be like a momofuku, like noodle bar, but with rice. My business partner at the time, Will Sears, was like, nobody's going to pay $28 for a bowl of rice. I'm like, but nobody wanted to pay $20 for ramen noodles. Why can't we do it? But we then leaned in. I really leaned into fast casual, saying, okay, what if, Chipotle does this very much fresh cooking type of approach. What about if we try to take that same approach and do this fresh cooking model around freshly milled grain? So all the rice is freshly milled. Well, not all of it. 90% of rice is freshly milled from different regions of the world that celebrate rice, and each of those bowls tell a story. Are the bowls seasonal? No. The bowls pretty much stay the same. Our wok vegetables might change from time to time based off the season, or introduce some, a specialty item for a quarter, something of that nature. But for the most part, nothing at FIELDTRIP has really changed since we've opened. We've added a couple of bowls. We've taken some things away. We're always constantly like tweaking to try to get better. I think the biggest thing, what I've come to the realization of, people really like to want to build their own stuff. And I think I'm fighting against the grain on that one.
Yeah. Do most people build their own bowl?
No, there's no build your own bowl section of Field Trip at all. You pick a bowl. I'm trying to give you maximum flavor. I hear these like horror stories from brands that tell me that people build salads and they bring it back telling them that they don't like the salad.
It's brutal. Yeah. And also it's really hard to track what's happening when everybody's building a bowl. You know, like if in store, you know, you're not bringing in every little thing that they add. It's like, what am I actually selling? You know?
Yeah. So we've launched an add-on section recently. But yeah, for the most part, you can eat Field Trip any meal period of the day, lunch or dinner. It's a complete meal. Very different than anybody else that classifies themselves as a bowl restaurant. I believe that rice is best served in a bowl, so that's why I call it a rice bowl shop.
Yeah. I mean, there's there's thousands of varieties of rice. So you chose, I know you have black rice and you have like a Texas brown and you have a Carolina gold, but like how did you choose the varietals that you did? And are you going to like keep adding on as you go?
Carolina gold rice was the foundation of the menu because that's America's rice. The reason why we call it Texas brown rice is Texas grows the most amount of brown rice in the country. So we're giving a big homage to Texas. And then the rest are like the mother grains of the world. So black rice comes from the Tribune Chinese emperors. So that's why we have black. We have Laonese sticky rice because Lao is the founders of sticky rice. We have basmati because basmati is basmati, but real basmati from India. And I think for me on the second part of your question is I want to get to the point of like, I don't know if I want to add more rice grains. I think I want to identify rice farmers.
Oh,
and it'd be great to be like, this Carolina gold rice comes from this rice farmer. This brown rice comes from this brown rice farmer. And that's where I hope to get to in the next 2 to 5 years as we continually keep to grow. I want to grow there in some type of like supply chain. Where does our salmon come from? Where does the shrimp come from? Like really letting people know where stuff comes from because I believe the brand is like a consciously better for you brand. And I really want to lean into that because rice farmers call me all the time.
Yeah.
I'm getting a rice farmer every week. I get an email from a rice farmer.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I bet as you scale, you can really get like an economy of scale to really support them, like buy an entire harvest.
Correct.
But there's so many. I mean, so like the idea of, you know, carnaroli or arborio or sushi rice or jasmine, that's just like, you know, not on the table.
That's just like basic. Like you get really deep into rice. You can get like Midlands and Jefferson Red and Carolina Gold.
all the Italian red rices are like so good.
You get into all the Italian red rices, but you know, there's so much. I mean, I tell people all the time, like just here in the United States, Jersey grows rice, Hudson Valley grows rice.
You know, something I love about when looking at the menu is, and just I just make assumptions from the menu is like you're being really smart about keeping it simple.
I'm trying to.
Because I mean, I'm
trying.
I've scaled a bunch of, you know, fast casual brands, and we're going to talk about it today. Like, here how it's going for you, but you know, the more complex it is, the more types of rice you have, the more types of, you know, every new ingredient you add on, it's just more complexity you add. So it definitely seems like, again, this might be an assumption, but that you're trying to keep it as simple as possible so you can scale.
I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible to scale. I think a lot of folks, when they look at like these scalable brands, most of them that have like very early stage brands that like have 10 locations, 8 locations, early stage, they have like 5 menu items.
Yeah.
It's literally like a burger, cheese, bun, maybe a chicken sandwich. You're like, oh my God, how do they have 10 locations? Like, yeah, they got 4 items. Oh, and they got a soda on the menu, you know? They're not really doing much.
Yeah.
The whole other side of the business of like how to manage that inventory, how to cost that out, that's very easy. And kudos to them. I think as they get into bigger mass markets, could that burger place or pizza spot or fried chicken restaurant make it in New Jersey or make it in Philly or make it in the Poconos? I mean, that's where my mind goes to when I think about Field Trip. I think Field Trip's more of a suburban, I call it suburban brand than it is an urban brand.
Yeah. You know, the great thing about simplicity of a menu too is like, I think the employees are happier because it's hard, you know, it's hard to just cooking a lot anyways. And the more things you have to remember, the more skills you have to do, the more like different types of pickups makes it more difficult. So I imagine as you scale, like that's a big plus.
Yeah,
but like,
everybody cooking isn't me. Right. I think when I first built the concept, it was like, oh, this is how I would cook it. This is how I want the line set up. This is how it's no more I. It's like, what can the team do? How can they do it? How does it get executed the best?
So, most people, by the way, I ordered some Field Trip.
Oh, you did? Oh, wow.
What's that?
Wow.
Yeah. Open it up. We got a couple bowls and some sides here.
The crab pockets.
Crab pockets. I will never not order crab if it's on the menu.
Oh, the fried fish.
Yep. Let's see what else we got. But you're pretty damn good at cooking rice. A lot of people screw up rice. First of all, I don't know why those are plantains. Yeah. I know you'd want those too. For some reason, Americans don't clean their rice, which is crazy.
I don't get it either. You got to wash your rice.
Yeah. But like,
I hope you wash your rice.
I mean, so I work for Floyd Cardoz, so I have like more, every time I touch rice, I think about Floyd, and I'm rinsing it I want to touch it with my hands. I want to see the water turn clear.
Like you work for Floyd, like we don't even need to talk about it. You wash rice.
But what do people get wrong usually when they cook rice?
Rice doubles in size. The first step is you got to have the right pot. Most people put rice in this small old pot, and then they wonder why the top is hard and the bottom is mushy. Make sure you get it with the sweet and sour sauce. Oh, yeah. The top is hard, the bottom is mushy. But you can't. That's the first step. Even before you wash the rice.
Good.
And then thank you. Then the rice. Then the washing of the rice is going to allow for that initial starch to come off, so the grains don't stick together. Mm-hmm. But you also wash your carrots and your mushrooms.
Yeah.
Right? You rice is grown in water. It's irrigation. Like you have to wash it. It's in a truck. It's milled. There's a lot of things. People are touching it. There might be some pebbles in there. I think so many Americans are so used to box rice that they're like, oh my God, the spices are in there. When am I going to wash the spices off? It's like, no, we're talking about like cooking really good, proper rice. And then you don't shake it or stir it like pasta. That's what everybody else says. They open the top, they look at it, they're shaking it, they're stirring it. You can't do that either.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to cook rice at home. I mean, maybe you got a really dope zojirushi, like, rice cooker, or like, or even in a pot, and you do the finger test. But when you have a fast casual spot like Field Trip, and you are opening more and more of these spots, and you have multiple types of rice, like, how are you cooking the rice?
Everybody can't cook the rice. I'm gonna grab a crab pocket. I can never
do it, man.
I can never pass up on one. By the way,
we got extra food here if anybody wants. I just ordered, a little mix of everything.
Thanks for ordering.
Candidly, I haven't been yet, so I was like, I can't talk to you and not have eaten some of the foods. So I got some food in here. I think it's the crispy fish, the fried chicken, which I definitely want a piece of.
That's the plantains with the hot honey.
That's the platanos, yeah. All right, I don't want to distract from the show, but we will eat some of that. But yeah, are you using combi ovens? Are you using rice cookers?
We use combi ovens. We use rice cookers. I think the best way to cook rice in a restaurant is in a 2-inch hotel pan, 2 quarts of rice. Use your finger trick. Put in the combi for 24 minutes.
Mm-hmm. For all your rice, you do that?
Well, black rice, brown rice, all the rice. Black rice, brown rice, 33 minutes to 35 minutes. But you can't. That's the best way to cook it. In some of the locations, due to volume or timing, if they're starting to run out of rice, they're cooking it in rice cookers for backup.
Mm-hmm. Are these gas powered or like
no, just electric powered? But yeah, we don't let everybody cook rice.
Oh, it's like you gotta graduate to rice.
You gotta earn to cook rice.
So how's
like you said, everybody can't cook rice.
Mm-hmm.
So if the rice is messed up, I know somebody that wasn't cooking rice was cooking rice, because you have to have patience. To cook rice, you have to have patience. It is something that you have to just let it do its own thing. It's like a person that doesn't want to be bothered at times.
Yeah.
if that's the best way to explain it.
Yep. So as you're scaling, like, do you just have programs set up in the combi? Of, like,
No,
this black rice
we
business?
come in, we do training. I wouldn't call us Burger University, but we do a little bit of rice training, how to use a wok, how to cook the rice. We think about who we're hiring. We're using key employees inside to be training. But it is a key component. If you order rice from Field Trip and it's effed up, then you're not coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and undercooked rice,
where most places like a Chipotle will overcook their rice because they're so scared that, one, the consumer's not used to a firm textured rice, and two, that the employees are going to undercook it. So when I first launched Field Trip, I used to cook rice like perfectly that had a bite to it, and customers would complain. So we started cooking the rice a little bit longer because everybody's palate isn't adjusted. It's just like al dente pasta. Everybody can't handle al dente pasta because at home, how do they cook their pasta? They cook it to smithereens. So rice, we try to cook it as perfectly as we can, where we're giving the consumer a little bit of what they want and a lot of what we believe in.
Yeah. And what is that training program like for the rice? Is there a Field Trip rice manual?
There is a Field Trip rice manual.
Yeah. Just a little tidbit of what that.
Lisa Cash, Director of Operations, is big on training. She taught herself how to cook so that she could also train people.
Oh wow, that's cool.
But yeah, you come into you come in 3 days in a unit and you work on 2 different areas of rice. About 5 different areas of rice. How to wash rice, how to measure rice, how to cook it, how to fluff it, how to fry rice.
That most people also just don't fluff the rice.
Yeah, we fluff and you salt.
Yeah.
There's no salt going in the water ahead of time.
Oh, really? Never.
Grain. No, never.
I've always been like, why? Because I don't typically, if with certain rices, but then if I'm if I'm making coconut rice at home, I'll soak it overnight in coconut milk, and then I do it in the zojirashi, however you pronounce that thing, and I always put salt in. But I've heard people say don't salt the rice beforehand. Like, well, what's the deal?
Right, you want the grain to burst like popcorn, and the salt locks up the bran and the germ, so it makes the rice cook longer. So you could cook rice in what I said, like 22 to 25 minutes. And then when you're fluffing it, you're adding the salt.
Yeah.
The grain is open. It's going to absorb all the flavor you give it at that point. And now I'm not saying don't put spices at that time. Spices. If you're cooking with spices in the pot, put it in there and let it cook with it. Yeah. But the salting part of it, salt at the end.
All right. I'm gonna
try it out. Let me know. Hit me in the DM. Text me.
All right. So, I mean, you start with 1, now you have 3. You come from sort of the fine dining background, and now you're doing some fast casual. Like, what was the big surprise or challenges from scaling this?
Biggest surprise is consistency.
How so?
I think that when we think about full service restaurants, we think they're the greatest restaurants in the world, and I think fast food restaurants that became multiple locations, to get that consistency when they got to 3 was really hard. Because you got to think about it. You're eating food today in Rockefeller Center, Field Trip. Then you're in Harlem tomorrow. Maybe you live in Harlem, you're eating dinner, and you're like, hold on, why is the flavor off, right? Or you're taking your kids to Columbia University, then you go to Rock Center the next day. The consistency's got to be great. And I mean, for me, and this is where it gets hard, right? Because when you're talking about restaurants like McDonald's, who's the most consistent restaurant in the world, but they're just opening a bag. You can't take that away from them because somebody still has to fry the chicken nuggets to the perfect time, hold them in the basket, put it in the box, put it in the bag, right? All these steps to get to the execution. I think the only thing that you'll get in a McDonald's that'll be inconsistent is the fries. Either be too salty or not salty enough, right? So Field Trip, why next? When I look at a Chipotle, who changed Chipotle? McDonald's changed Chipotle, train them. So that's our North Star when we're looking at stuff. There are 3,000 restaurants. We're 3, but when I look at them, I go sometimes in a Chipotle and just stand back and watch them. How do they work the line? How do they get that? Yeah. What does it look like? How's it packaged?
So what are some of the things that you do to maintain consistency?
purchasing the same item, making sure our broadliners has the same order guide for everybody. Nobody can alter it. A consistency right now of a quarterly training with the team, which is really hard because it costs money. It's really hard for a small brand. Yeah.
Anything like the daily operation that you do to make sure that there's like checks and balances or QA?
We are getting into a daily check now. You know, like how long can something stay on the line for? Like in our busier locations, we just introduced a hot box to hold backup, making sure the team isn't putting too much in there because they're scared they're going to run out, right? And I'm not a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of batch cookery. Like that's what FIELDTRIP is. It's a batch cookery brand. It's not a hold for 4-hour brand like a lot of other brands out there. So that's where I would say where I butt heads with what I created. Yeah. Because as it grows, it starts to change and you have to start to put different things in place. Some of those skill sets I have, some of those skill sets I don't have. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was probably the biggest curveball that I saw when like trying to scale, you know, these simpler concepts is some of the sacrifices that you have to make so that enough customers can eat it in enough time, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm also learning like some of these bigger brands are they don't make anything.
Well, that's a whole other. I mean, so you know that's interesting. That's like it brings up like so. Last season, on the show, we were talking a lot about like the difference between standardization and consistency, and you know, Seamus Mullen and I were talking about it, and I think Marcus Glocker as well. Just thinking about like how do you create consistency without standardization? Because like McDonald's is consistent, but it's completely standardized. You have exactly the same diameter every single time. The bun is exactly this. The fry is exactly this. And that's standardization. And that's fine if that's what it's a lot more expensive to do that. Consistency is like not just the consistency of what something looks like, but like how it feels, how it makes somebody feel, the vibe, the culture. Like that part is harder. Like how do you you definitely feel like you have
McDonald's mastered that. They make you feel happy.
Well, yeah. I
mean, they tell us that
it works. I mean, the thing is like they created standardization that works, you know, for a certain sort of environment, you know, and again, that works. It's a lot more expensive to do that, but you know,
is it per se standardized?
I mean, that's the thing is well, yeah, it's standardized, and I don't know if it's actually consistent. You know,
I can't say that. I haven't eaten there in a long time.
It's I mean, yeah, it's pretty standardized. But what I'm curious about is like, I mean, you're a pretty soulful dude, and you have a lot of inspiration that like goes into what is FIELDTRIP, right? So there's a vibe that you're going for. There's a culture that you're going for. There's, you know, I imagine your team thinks a certain way about the brand. Do you think about how you maintain that over time?
Well, that's a trickle down effect. It's got to trickle from the top down, right? You have to be constantly projecting what the brand is, because as you grow, a lot of people say it gets diluted. It gets harder to project that. It gets harder to tell people that because you don't touch them as much. You don't see them as much as you used to see the 10 people or 15 people at the location you were in. So I think you have to use technology to touch people. Some of it's standardization. A lot of it is training. A lot of it is just touching employees. You know, utilizing your team to touch employees. It's just not about me, the founder or the chef anymore. It's about director of operations, director of catering, them being in the units, spreading the team that way to make sure the culture's alive, to make sure people are doing things the right way, to keep them happy. We're always talking about employees we're always like, all right, we want people to be excited about the food. And sometimes I'm like, I don't really care if people are excited about the food. I want people just to put out the food the right way, right? So then you're in this tug and pull, right? But realistically, people should be excited about the food we're putting out. If they have no experience in the food world, and this is just a job for them, or they have a lot of experience in the food world, they should be excited about what we're cooking, how we're preparing it, who we're ordering it from, the storytelling. And we have a lot of employees like that, which I believe is the reason why the brand has been able to expand. And we have a lot of employees that just come in, work, and don't care anything about the food.
Yeah. If you had to ask like any random employee at FIELDTRIP, like, why does the company exist? What do you think they would say?
They probably would say because of me.
Well, then why do you exist?
I think a lot of them say that. I think a lot of people work at Field Trip because of what I created. Like they see it like, oh, this guy really works really hard. He really believes in this concept and he really wants us to live a better lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Like Field Trip is about people being able to grow in their communities. It's not really, yes, it's a rice bowl shop, but it's really about empowering people like Shay, who lived in, a place that wasn't safe for her to live, that she was able to grow and get her own apartment, or it's about Kima, who's trying to start her own hot sauce company. So she has a place to put her feet down and maybe she sells us her hot sauce one day. Or it's like Miles, who worked at Red Lobster for 22 years and they just blatantly laid her off. And now she's working with us and she loves work. Like it's really about building the community. And I think a lot of people know that I'm about building community or the inner community of Field Trip. And I constantly preach that to the team. Like I'm constantly letting them know you're only staying in a position because you chose to stay in that role, not because I want you to stay a porter for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm curious if like upward mobility is like baked into the company in any way. If like how do people grow into more roles?
So yeah, we have a system now where you can go from everyday employee, like everyday whatever your title is, to a team lead. Then from a team lead, if a store opens up, to manager in training. Then from a manager in training into a store manager. We have employees that we want to push up. They tell us no. They're not ready for it yet.
Yeah.
I appreciate that honesty because a lot of time you do push employees up and then you get there and you're like, what? This person shouldn't be there and they're not ready mentally or personally. So that's great. But we're always pushing folks. We used to have a prep cook, Anna. She could have ran a location, but the sad part about it is she can write English. She could read English, but she couldn't speak English confidently. So I told her I'll meet her halfway. You really want to be a manager? I'll pay for you to go to school. I'll pay for you to go learn English in a language school, right? We paid for her to go learn for a whole year, paid for her to go do it. She got a little bit better, but then it became too mentally strenuous on her, and she wound up not wanting to do it. And it's sad because she had all the skill set, right? But would I be setting her up for success? Like, how would she manage a team?
Yeah.
How would she talk to customers?
Yeah.
I'm like, you could just use Google Translate.
Yeah.
But realistically, it's not effective, right? So you do hit a lot of roadblocks, especially in this industry with people that have really great skill sets, but there's something there that holds them back. And we try to invest in them to let them know we want you to get there. Even though we're a small company, we want you to get there, but we need you also to commit to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. You can teach somebody a lot of skills, but giving them the desire to want more is real tough.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always find with like, a chef like you that starts a fast casual brand, some folks might come there because they know of your work, right? And I remember, back in the day when I had this concept called Bark, and there'd be cooks. Like there was one in particular, this guy Albert Wynn, and he was just really fucking good. Like he was just a really, really good cook. Never cooked before in a restaurant. He'd just gotten out of culinary school, and he came and worked for us at a fast casual spot. And I was like, "You gotta go, man. You gotta go to." He ended up going to David Chang's spot, and I was like, "This is great, man. You're doing really well, but like you're gonna go be a chef." Do you ever come across that where you see someone?
We have somebody that right now. We have Patricia.
Yeah,
Patricia's been with us for 4 years. She's going to be a star one day. She's young. She's like 23 years old. But instead of like just keeping her working like a line station, let's empower her, put her in a management training program. She winds up running a store. She ran Harlem store at one point. She opened up the Columbia store and really empower that and give her that skill set early on because she has a desire to do it. She just doesn't have the skills. So why not take somebody that really loves food, really wants to be there, really enjoys it, wants to work for the company and say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to do food costs. I'm going to teach you how to order. I'm going to teach you how to manage people, right? And really empower them to do it versus like learning like I did from Alfredo, Like I got a sous chef job and I didn't know how to order at Jane, and Alfredo taught me, and he was a lead prep guy. He like would go in the walk-in with me and be like, all right, come on, count. Got to count this stuff. What are you doing? You messed up the fucking order yesterday, man. Count this stuff. And because nobody took the time to really train me, I knew how to do inventory because I worked at a hotel called Skytop, and the chef there I did inventory with. So I put on my resume, like, I know how to do inventory. So if you know how to do inventory, you know how to order. I never ordered a day in my life when I was at Jane. You know how many times I was running around New York City getting stuff in that era?
Do you remember the guy that had the who fucked up the order card?
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if he's still around. Is he still around?
I don't know, but I know.
Is that business card? Like if you messed up your order, he was in the Lower East Side. He's like in Essex Street.
I used him a couple times.
Yeah. Shout out to him if he's still around.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking a little bit about leadership in your team. And
well, leadership is important. I think as a small emerging brand startup, you need leadership. It costs, so you got to figure out who you want to pay and who you're going to train.
Yeah, and when we think about like your leadership style, so just to wind things up, I know you had kids. I didn't know you had 2 twins.
Yeah,
which is insane. I can't even like fathom what that's like. But like I know as a parent, I've learned more in the last few years about how to be a better leader to my team because of how I interact with my kids than I think I have in, all the time.
Facts.
Patience, understanding, like emotion, why people do the things that they do, how to, look at the problem and not the person. And I'm curious if it's the same for you.
I look too much at the problem and not the person.
Yeah. So what have you taken from parenting that has made you a better leader, or maybe not, maybe the opposite?
What have I taken from parenthood that made me a better leader? I definitely patience. Definitely try to understand the full picture. Like when you talk to a 6-year-old, you're like, okay, so why did you do this? Break it down. And then they don't want to tell you. And then it's like, okay. And then on being understanding.
Yeah.
But I think I've always been an understanding person. Like I know everybody has personal shit in their life. Right. And I've been a firm believer that if your personal life is somewhat established, your professional life will be good. But if you don't have a good personal life, you're not going to be good in the workplace.
Yeah. I think I really struggle with that. Like, especially coming up as a line cook in New York, like it's just so maniacally, like just come in every day, crush your station. The person next to you wants your job. You just like everything. Right. You're working 100 hours a week. And we sort of discount the fact that, absent of having things outside your life, that you can have you find joy in. It makes it actually really hard to be great at the other thing. And I think now about like my kids, and if they said, Dad, I want to be a chef, the things, what I would tell them. And I know what I would tell them, but what would you tell your kids?
I told my kids they want to be a chef. I probably would tell them the same thing my dad told me. All right, let's rock it. Let's do it. I probably would expose them to it probably a little bit earlier in life and let them know it's a gritty business. Like it's a working class business. Like as much glitz and glamour as you see it on TV, at the end of the day, it's working class. That's why my mom didn't want me to do it. It's like, we're working class folks. Why do you want to stay in this category? I just been able to figure out how to break through it a little bit, but it's still a working class industry. I don't think it's ever going to become anything else. Like maybe one day it's not a working class industry, but I don't see it.
Yeah, it's a...
because it's too many highs to low, many lows to high. So I would definitely tell my kids that like it's working class. It means you're going to work. You're working every day. You're going to be on your feet. You're using your hands. You're lifting heavy things, and really letting them understand that. Because I really think like media has brainwashed a lot of folks on what the food industry really is. And then when they really get in it, they don't understand it. Because it doesn't stop.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think making it clear that, whatever you see on TV, there's
that's like
there's way more work. I mean, look, there's also like this whole influencer, like, cooks. I don't know. I mean, I don't know a lot about that world, but there are folks that never step in the kitchen a day in their life. And
yeah, and I mean, a lot of people, the way my wife puts it now is like back in the day, models used to be the only people on covers of magazines. And then all of a sudden, celebrities started getting on the cover of magazines. And now everybody wants to use the word chef. So you can't get mad about it. Like, there's a lot of chefs around now. And I think everybody wants to use the word chef. In our industry, people that have worked really hard on it to grow and get that title are like, how dare you call yourself a chef?
Yeah, it's a tough one, man.
You know,
it's
because a chef is something that is much more than just cooking food.
I think
it's being a leader, it's driving, it's cost, it's a lot. There's a lot of things impacted in that name.
I think they need like another word. They need to invent a new word.
They need to invent a new word.
Because there are people on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, that like they're entertaining, you know, and they've built a brand, and that's fucking awesome. You know, kudos to you. They're not a chef.
They're
you
not.
know, and look, we would be haters if we're just like,
Gordon Ramsay's calling 8-year-old kids chef.
Yeah,
hey,
I mean,
chef. Like, what are you talking about, Gordon?
There's something to it. There's definitely like a value that there should be another sort of like term for it. But I always find it's like the majority of those things that you see that they're making, like, you can't make that. That's not real food. You know,
No.
It looks really cool, and so I think that there's a difference between the two. And anyways, it's a bit of a tangent, but what I was getting at more was like, you know, I think we came up in similar, you know, similar background of how we sort of, you know, were cooking. And like, I think about, you know, telling my kids if they want to be a chef, you know, it's, you know, there's 100-hour weeks for a very long time to get really good, like there is with anything.
I think also like the food industry is very similar to the finance industry, right? You're there early mornings, late nights, if you're trying to get to the top.
Yeah.
Right? The difference between the finance industry and the chef industry is more zeros at the end.
Way more zeros.
Right?
And I think a lot of people forget about that when they start. And I think the problem is, and it's maybe changed a bit now. I think the culture is different, but like it was for a very long time, 100% of your time, energy, effort, thought was on the kitchen that you're in. And everything else is just, you're in this bubble. And there's a really big positive to that in some ways. But again, at the end of the day, you know, the end result of this is there's only a few things that you can do, you know, unless you go into sort of media and things like that.
But I think our era of cooking changed that, right? Like, hold on, let's give you at least 2 days off in a row. Right?
Yeah.
We started to fight for those things. And now there's a little bit more that I think people are getting, or respect, right? People are getting some PTO.
Which they should. And I think the downstream effect of that I think is really important, that I think was lost with the last our generation of cooking, was when you don't have that time. It's not just that you don't have holidays off. It's not just that you don't have like time of a day off. It's that all you know is the kitchen. And so you don't have time for art or music or like that, you know. And
I agree.
And what ends up happening is, one, you fast forward 12 years and you might be a really incredible technical cook with very little perspective outside of what it's like to be a cook.
I mean, I was like that for a really long time.
Yeah. And what makes you great and what makes Field Trip great, right, is that you have a lot of other perspectives that you're bringing to it, because you went to Ghana, because you went to, you know, other countries and visited, because you embraced your culture, because you love music and the culture of Harlem, things like that. All that is a huge part of what makes Field Trip great. The technical part of it is there, right? But you have to have that stuff. And I think what I'm actually grateful for now is the industry is changing, and what I'm hopeful that even if my kids say they want to be a chef is different now, is that people have the space to do that, and you have to. You can't just be technically a really good cook. You have to figure out what else, you know, what else are you about? What else do you love? What else are you going to bring to that food? And I think that's why Field Trip is going to be a huge success, because we got some bowls here. These are delicious, you know, and I'm sure it's all going to be fucking awesome. But that's not enough. You know,
No.
People have to have a reason of why they want to come to work every day. Customers have to have a reason why they believe, you know, to eat there. And I think
that's the hardest thing to crack, though, is like getting the customer to believe why they come there. Danny Meyer's done that really well. I remember listening to him talk one time and saying, you know, I sell roasted chicken. The guy across the street sells roasted chicken. Why are people coming to me? because they know what organizations I support. They know all the things of what the brand stands for. And I think that's the biggest thing is like building trust.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Mm-hmm. But you have to have a vision. The vision can't be, I'm going to have the best chicken in the world.
No.
There has to be a why as to why you're doing it. And if you have that and you believe in it, and it's something that other people can get behind, then you have something. And I think that there's a lot of like, I call them kind of like synthetic companies that like see a white space and like, we should have a salad concept. We should have a chicken concept. And we'll do this and this and this. And then you can, if you understand economics, economics of a business, you can probably scale that. And if you understand private equity, you could probably even get enough funding to like get that to a big number. But like ultimately, it's not a really evergreen way to start a business or to grow a business because it's got no foundation.
Well, I think that's why we're different in the space. Like we started off in Harlem between 115, 116 for Lenox. People aren't launching fast casuals in Harlem. Now, there's a lot of fast casuals in Harlem.
Really?
Yeah, Just Salad's there, Chick-fil-A's there.
Yeah.
Wingstop. I mean, people are opening up all the time or calling me or emailing me, hey, what do you think? I'm like, oh, you're interested in Uptown? And it's the same thing like our perspective in Rock Center. Like we're offering something cultural. Like there's Mexican, but after that, everything else is pretty much the same. So, we are definitely bringing something to spaces that are very different than you're seeing other people bringing or brands that are opening.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and it's also like, you have something when it's sparking, something similar from everyone else. Like you open Harlem and everybody else starts coming. I did want to, I think you actually mentioned this some time ago. Maybe you posted it or something, but this is kind of a random tangent, but crunchy rice. You got pagao, you have concon, you have tutong, you have, sukarat. Every culture has like a crunchy rice. And, Ghana has their thing. Korea has their thing. I mean, everyone, other than America. I don't think we have one.
No, I'm not sure.
But is there some way you're like thinking of like incorporating, you have a lot of rice at the restaurant.
I've thought about it so many times. Like, how could we do it? We don't cook in that method to get that rice. But I did think about it like, could we crisp it in a waffle iron? Could we do, could we do some things? I've always thought about like, how can we get crispy rice? We thought about doing like rice fries. Like we've thought about many different plays on it, but then it goes back to labor and this and that. So, and adding another item, like, is this really going to generate hype or making people come? So, but it is always on the top of my mind.
Waffle iron's a good idea. I mean, leftover rice, if you have, like, is all your rice just cooked separately and then you add things to it? Or do you have like a sofrito-based thing that's like, flavored rice?
We have some things, like we have herbs that we add to our rice. We have a coconut milk kind of bomb that we put in the sticky rice. 2 of our rices are fried. Yeah, there are some type of sofrito mixes or umami sauces that get added to it that are house made. There's a lot of house made moments.
Yeah.
Or scratch cookery.
I mean, so, thinking about that, like you worked at, you Jane, Cecil, Tribeca Grill, a bunch of other spots. So you come from that background, but do you find it's like hard to balance? I mean, you already started talking about like the things you need to do as you start to grow, like to balance like the authentic thing you're trying to make with technique that you'd like to, deploy from fine dining that would make it better, but it might change the authenticity, or like things that you have to do to scale it. Do you find, is that a struggle continually, or is it you kind of figured it out in the beginning and now you're just scaling it? Nah,
we still learn it. We still learn every day. We still don't have our ideal kitchen. We're a 5-year-old brand with 3 locations and a couple to come and close one. And you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot to take in. I think when I look at this all, I'm in this for the long haul, right? We'll get to the point where maybe year 8, we open 20 locations, right? It's like bing, bing, bang. But right now, it's just like, where's the right place? Where do we go next? Okay, what makes the line more efficient? How do we maximize labor? Are these the right prices? Is this the right vendors? You know what I mean? There's a lot to look to. Is this the right menu scheme, or do we need to eliminate? There's a lot of things to look into it. I think that's what gets, when you go back to talking about scaling, is like, if you want to have infrastructure, you got to get money to have this infrastructure, right? So you're raising money. That money for infrastructure, you're just floating, right? Because you got to get to a certain amount of locations to pay for that. You can't do that early on.
No.
From a business perspective, I probably tried to ignite that too early and wasted some money. So there's that tug and that pull. Why I think when I go back to Chipotle, why I was really smart. There were like 8 locations and they got McDonald's, and all that extra infrastructure, HR, marketing, supply chain. You know how much money, like, that's a lot of money to raise just for that, a couple mil. Before you talk about building places. So, I'm just trying to learn and every day just learning, trying to figure out who Field Trip is and where should it go. Why I think when I look at inquiries of folks that hit me up, like just everyday people that learn about the brand, especially like Rockefeller Center, it's like Field Trip is a place that's transit. Many cultures walk through the doors. People are from places in New Jersey that I want to say I never heard of. But you're like, you guys really want Field Trip? And it's not like one person. You'll get like 10, 15 people. You're like, hold on. Maybe I'm looking at this brand totally wrong. So you have to recalibrate. I think we'll throw a rock somewhere. Like, we'll throw a rock. Like, yeah, I think I'll do 2 more in New York City. And then after that, I'm sailing somewhere else.
Yeah. Are you thinking right now about do you think about like what does 5 years from now look like? Yeah,
100%. You have to.
So what does that look like for you?
5 years now will be 10 years in. I hope I have 30 field trips. 5 more years.
What do you do outside of when you're not working on a field trip?
I got a cookbook out, Simple Art of Rice. I'm still JJ. Like, I'm still always thinking of new concepts, figuring out how to take over the culinary world. The battery's fully charged and going.
Yeah. Do you have I'm always curious. Like I always find that it's a bad sign if I don't look back at 5 years ago and I'm not embarrassed with the output of like what I did. I'm like, I always want to look back like, oh man, that's as good as I was able to, to make that.
That's what I was cooking.
Yeah.
That's why I say like Field Trip menu hasn't changed, but I'm always like, yo, the wok vegetables are trash, guys. Like the wok vegetables I don't like them anymore. We have to figure, I've been cooking wok like some variation of a wok vegetable in my house.
Yeah.
Probably like 50 variations to try to figure out the new flavor of what it is. I might be close, but like I'm constantly like, there's no way we should say that the food we put out today was just as good as it was when we first opened. There's going to be items there that are rock stars that you're never going to change. And there's going to be items there that we're like, okay, we need to figure out how to get better. Also, like for me, I'm a progressive guy. If I'm not progressing, something's wrong. I need to relook at this.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, if I look back and I'm the same as I was even a year ago, I get freaked out. Do you have any like personal systems or anything you use to like audit how things are going for you, not even just the company, just for you, like how things are going?
I do a self-check. I do a year plan out myself. Like, okay, professionally, what would I like to do? Personally, what would I like to do? And then look back 6 months, look back in a year, talk to key people in my life, like my wife or people that I'm close with, friends, people I work with, right? How do we get better? What do we do? And I think you just have to be real with yourself. Like, for me, I'm like, am I still a good person? Has somebody like made me become mean or evil or act a certain way? But at the end of the day, like my mom's going to constantly check me. Aunt Jeannie's always going to check me, right? Like there's family in my life that I always could check in with, or people that are my sister. Like people are always going to say stuff. Nobody's going to be like, oh my God, your chef JJ owns this business and it won James Beard Awards. Like we can't tell you anything. That's not how it rolls. And I think when I look at what I consider like successful people in spaces, their family's still really heavily around them, or the day ones. And I think a lot of people forget about those people that have been rocking with them. Some people you definitely outgrow, right? Or they don't come along with you. But there are people that you need to, that know you better than maybe you know yourself, that you need to constantly talk to. And I kind of had that moment this year where I was like, I don't want to say not talking to my family a lot, but so caught up in what's going on that I was forgetting to invite my family to events that I was doing, things I was partaking in. And then I was like, whoa, what? Until Aunt Crystal was like, hey, I don't get an invite. No, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, well, you just did 7 things and I haven't heard from you. It's like, oh, you're right.
Yeah.
So it's really important. And I think that's why like Steph Curry is like level-headed, LeBron, like these guys have their family, insular, close friends, insular around them. And when you look at some other folks, you're like, well, how's that happening? It's like, well, who's around them? Who are they talking to? Is not keeping them in this level-head space.
Do you have like mentors or people you look up to?
I'm always looking for a mentor. I email Steve Ells all the time. He never responds back.
Steve, come on, man.
He never responds back. I know he's working on a new concept and all, but he never responds back. I mean, try to look at people in spaces where I potentially hope to be and try to get their knowledge. But yeah, I mean, Brian Ellis, who's a corporate chef of the Smith, always checks in with me because I worked with him when I was at Jane. Dick Parsons, like ex-Time Warner CEO, always if I need financial advice. My dad, like, you know, there's people that I'm always constantly trying to talk to.
It's so important, man. Just having people.
Mark Campbell, who used to own Shark Bar, was a very legendary spot. So like, there's definitely some folks, you have to have a mentor. It doesn't matter where you are in your career.
Yeah, or at least advisors, people that are smarter to you with the thing that they do. I always find that it's like, life is just your personal, like your health, your relationships, and your profession. And it's like every year I just look back, I'm like, how am I better professionally? What am I better at this year than last year professionally? How are my relationships better this year? And how have I improved health?
That's great. I'm taking that with no. That's a great way.
Sure, like health
is
relationships, which is family and friends, and profession. But and I think people.
Did your grandfather tell you that when you were younger?
No, but it's it's interesting because like I think sometimes people forget about that spectrum and like you just are focused on your friends and family and maybe your health, or you're just focused on your profession and your health, or like
can't do anything without your health.
You need all three, correct. And without them, you can be really professionally successful and then have nobody to talk to about.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be successful.
What happens to a lot of people.
Yeah. And so that's always like, it's a struggle, but it's like, every year, if you just look back, like what, how has this changed this year? Those 3 things. I always look at that. But anyways, it's the holidays, man. I'm stoked that we got this in before the new year.
Thank you.
I got a little gift for you too.
Oh, that's nice of you. Thank you very much.
This is my mentor, Chef Greg Kuntz, who passed away.
Oh, Kuntz.
So we give these Kuntz spoons out.
Kuntz was your mentor?
He was, yeah.
He ate at the Cecil.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've
seen this one.
That's the deluxe.
Yeah.
So I got you. Well, everybody needs Sharpies.
I always need a Sharpie.
And I got you a meez bag and a shirt.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Kuntz came and ate at the Cecil. That was like one of probably the most epic moments. He came and ate at Cecil. Wolfgang Puck ate at Cecil. But yeah, that was one of the probably most epic moments. He came with like a table of 10. And Dick Parsons used to eat at his restaurants because he was the CEO of Time Warner, Citibank. Would eat there all the time.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, you own this restaurant now. I'm going to come and I also read about this kid. I want to see what he's about. We chopped it up and it was a real big honor. I felt like I took a picture with him that day, but I just can't find it.
Yeah. He was incredible, man. And just an incredible measure of success as a chef because so many great chefs came from him. Floyd's the same. That was like, 2020 was just an insane year. Like we lost Kuntz and I remember texting Floyd about it. Like, just trying to plan a funeral if we could. And then COVID happened. And then literally 3 weeks later, Floyd passed away. And and Floyd was, was an incredible mentor as well. Like that was just it's just an insane.
He put the work in for people to understand Indian food in America.
Yeah, you wouldn't have any of these, in days or
people all the time. Like if Floyd, all the praise he's seeing for Indian food right now, you gotta give that back to Floyd. You can't.
By the way, I don't even know Field Trip. The idea of white people having curries and things like that.
Yeah,
like he opened up a lot of that.
A lot.
You know, like the palette was very different.
Correct.
You know, I mean, it wasn't just him. There's a lot, but like,
but he's one of the main players.
Yeah. Anyways, man, this is great. I
Thanks
appreciate it.
for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yep. All right, that's a wrap.